That has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm going to be talking about. I just know if you do 13 weeks in the book of Song of Solomon and you don't show that clip, there'll be riots. So I just decided I'm going to show that clip. For no other reason am I okay? Yeah, there we go. For no other reason than I know everybody's been wanting that. So Mowage, make up your own reason why I showed that. Hey, this is the service. Welcome to Hope Community. My name is Steve Treichler. I'm one of the pastors here at Hope, and this is the service that you get to ask a question. If you want to, towards the end, if you have something you want to ask, go right ahead. Let's just keep it germane to the book of Song of Solomon, which is risky enough, okay? So we'll stay there, though. If that's anything you want to ask about in the book of Song of Solomon, that would be great. We are in our last week. 13 weeks we've been in this book, and we had 3 extra weeks, so 16 weeks total, where Core talked about the false intimacy series, where he just talked about the pains of false intimacy and some of those things. So we've been in this thing for a little while, and it's kind of like an old friend saying goodbye to. I've really enjoyed this series. This has been wild. I've never had a series where I've had as many wild interpretation of ideas, people emailing me saying, what do you think about this? And I'm like, could be. I don't know. This is such an interesting book of the Bible, and it's so cool that God has put it in the Bible, and so I hope that it has been a good series for you as well. It is, I believe, if you remember way back to the first week, we talked about the approaches, kind of how you even approach the book kind of makes a difference on everything. So some people see it only as an allegory that God was trying to explain about his relationship with his people. Ultimately, it's about Christ and the church. That's what some people say. And I would say, I don't think so. I mean, I think that it gets a little creepy at times if it's Christ and the church. I'm just saying, there's some scenes in there that are a little. So I would say that I take what's called a literal progressive approach. I actually made that term up, but I think it's going to become big. And the idea is that you look at the book in its original context, the original idea, and that was that it's between a man and a woman where they fall in love, they get married, and they have this great relationship. They have a great sexual relationship, and they also have conflict, and they work it through, and a lot of things going on in this book. And I think from that, though, you can extract principles that teach you about other relationships, about yourself, about your character, and ultimately, I think they teach you about your relationship with God. I think that is definitely there. We'll talk about that again today, but I think this has been a great book to look at this. And I just wanted to sum it up by I've been looking at more commentaries and more books on this particular book of the Bible than any other series in the 15 years I've been at Hope. And so this one I have 15 different books that I am looking at, cheating on, trying to see what other people think, and very seldom do they all agree. There's only one passage. I remember telling you that a couple weeks ago what that was, if you remember. There's one passage everybody agrees. What that is where he says he's climbing the palm tree to get the fruit. And I'm just going to leave it like that. You can figure it out. But all the commentaries agree on that one. The other ones, everybody's just all over the place. What are these things about? What does it mean? All these kind of different things. And so one of the ones I've been looking at is this one called Bible Knowledge Commentary. It's kind of a general commentary for things. But I like the way they close the whole. This is what they had at the end of their section on Song of Solomon. It says, the Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon is another name for it, is a beautiful picture of God's endorsement of physical love between husband and wife. Marriage is to be a monogamous, permanent, self-giving unit in which the spouses are intensely devoted and committed to each other and take delight in each other. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And that's the goal. I mean, that's what it's after. That's what the book is talking about. And in this world, that will be a very, very difficult thing because we live in a fallen world. And we have fallen, broken relationships. But this book is a book that shows you the pathway to a healthy, loving marriage relationship. Then it says, the Song of Songs shows that sex in marriage is not dirty. The physical attractiveness of man and woman for each other and the fulfillment of those longings in marriage are natural and honorable. But the book does more than extol physical attraction between the sexes. It also honors pleasing qualities in the lovers' personalities. Also moral purity. And I would argue that's one of the main things in the book is purity of character. Not just sexual purity, and I think that's part of it, but it talks about what's your character? What kind of person are you? Also, moral purity before marriage is praised. premarital sex has no place in God's plans. Faithfulness before and after marriage is expected and honored. Such faithfulness in marital love beautifully pictures God's love for and commitment to his people. If you remember way back, we talked about what was the purpose of marriage. We went to Genesis chapter 2, and it's where Eve isn't even created yet. Adam's all alone. God says it's not good for Adam to be alone or a man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. They go through this whole thing, and Adam says, wow, check her out. That is great. And then the passage says what I read in the previous slide, what was on her, what said, for this cause a man will leave his father and mother, be united, and the two will become one flesh. In other words, the whole goal of this was to end originally aloneness. Adam was all alone, and then the marriage is the answer to that. Now, you can be unalone and be single now because there's other people in the world. Haven't figured that out yet. There are. But there's something about the marriage relationship for most people, and some won't. Some, that's not what God has for you, and maybe it's something that you're not desirous for. But for most people, they'll be, at some point, married. And so this book is God's way of kind of highlighting this whole relationship about romance, about dating, about sex, about marriage, and ultimately about him. Because after you get done looking at why God created it, if you go to the New Testament, God loves to use the analogy of marriage to talk about his relationship with us. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And so this idea that Jesus is like a husband and we are all like a bride, and that analogy is there. So it definitely does link into what God thinks about us. It's just not, that's not the original intent of it. It's more coming down the road. So we've been through this for 13 weeks. If this is your first time here, sorry about that. I'm not going to go through 12 weeks of review for you. Quickly just read the first 7 chapters while you're sitting there. That'll be fine. If you got your Bible with you, open it up to Song of Solomon. If you want to know where it is, it's right in the middle of your Bible. Boom. Right in the middle. If you probably got to Psalms, if you did that, hang right. It's a smaller book. If you get to Isaiah, you went too far. It's right in there, right after Psalms and Proverbs and Psalms, Proverbs. What's the next book? Ecclesiastes and then Song of Solomon. I knew there was another little one in there. Yeah. Okay, Ecclesiastes and then Song of Solomon. Okay. I'm going to read this through. We're going to just do the last 8 verses of the book, and here we go. Song of Solomon. There's also an insert. If you want to follow on the insert, whatever you want to do, it's just great. It'll be on the screen as well behind me. Song of Solomon 8 through 14. It says, we have a young sister, and her breasts are not yet grown. What shall we do for our sister for the day she is spoken for? If she's a wall, we will build towers of silver on her. If she is a door, we will endorse her with panels of cedar. I am a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Thus I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. He let out his vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for its fruit 1,000 shekels of silver. But my own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, O Solomon, and 200 are for those who tend its fruit. You who dwell in the gardens with friends in attendance, let me hear your voice. Come away, my lover, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the spice-laden mountains. There you go. That's the end of the book. A lot of people say, as a matter of fact, if you have a New Jerusalem Bible, not a real popular translation, anybody? Nobody. Anybody ever heard of the New Jerusalem Bible? There's a couple people who didn't raise their hand the whole way. It was just like, yeah, kind of. Nobody else will know, so maybe I won't. Yeah, there's a Bible called the New Jerusalem Bible. I don't know why they called it that. It's kind of a different name. But in that particular version of the Bible, they call this like an epilogue. I even think it's like a footnote. They just say it's like after the story. It's kind of explaining some of the story. Afterward, so to speak. And that's kind of what it is a little bit tonight. And it is different. And if you just listened as I was going through, as much of the Song of Solomon, it's like, huh? And I'll just be honest with you. Not that I've been lying to you the last 12 weeks, but I love when people say that. I'll be honest with you. That I've read through this thing many times. And it was not until I took the whole thing, printed it into a little, bunch of piece of paper, and just worked it through and thought about the book, that the thing actually started making any sense to me. I never got anything out of Song of Solomon for all the years that I've ever read it. It just takes, this is a tricky, poetic, think about it, repeating things, themes going on, and so on. So if you're kind of lost there, just as I just read through it, we'll walk through it real slow, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. Now, if you think of the word benefits, you usually think of like benefits like a job, right? You got this job, and what are the benefits? What are the benefits at Hope? We don't, let's see, we have some health. We get to make copies. We have copies. That's a benefit. I was asking people first service, I said, what are some benefits people had? And Kirk Livingston was sitting right over, and he goes, accidental dismemberment. I'm like, whoa, where do you work, pal? You know, for a logger or something, or what, you know? But there's all these benefits you have, and the point of a benefit is it's something that you don't pay for, you pay very little for. If you pay everything for it, it's not a benefit then, but you pay for it, and the idea is it's something you put a little bit of money into, say like life insurance, you put a little bit of dollars into, that if you were to die, bummer of a way to collect it, but if you were to die, then your descendants or your beneficiaries would get the benefit, okay? So it's a kind of something for the future. So today I want to look at this whole thing, and I want to call it this. The whole thing is the benefits of good preparation. That's what tonight's going to be about. And if you look, I think somewhere, I think maybe even your worship folder calls it walls and doors, and that's really what we're going to be talking about as well. But the point is the benefits of good preparation. All right? That's what we're talking about. Many of you are listening to this sermon series, and Seth and I were praying beforehand, and I just remember even praying, saying, some of you won't even apply any of this stuff for, years, whatever. That's fine. As far as it relates to being a husband or a wife. Hopefully it applies to how it applies to your life you're applying right now as you're sitting here. But how it applies down the future, it's good preparation, what you're going through. All right, now let's take this. Really, it's kind of two things going on, but I'm going to divide it into kind of 6 little stopping points along the way. It's really just 2 things, but we'll take a look at these. First thing, let's take a look at this. There's these brothers, right? It says the role of the big brothers. We have a young sister, and her breasts are not yet grown. What shall we do for our sister for the day she is spoken for? So let's just kind of say this real quick. Let's say the Captain Obvious stuff. Somebody, the we, has a sister. She's young. She's so young, the phrase is her breasts are not yet grown. She hasn't even gone through puberty yet, okay? She's that young. That's going on. And we're trying to do for her, I think in a positive way, the day she is spoken for. What shall we do for our sister for the day she is spoken for? Meaning her wedding day, the day that she'll be. What are we supposed to do for her? Okay, now a lot of people have all kinds of different, who's saying this? Again, it's a song, and so it's hard to, there's no telling us exactly who it is. And the author's dead, and the soundtrack died somewhere. I don't know how that got lost, but that we don't have any of that. So we're trying to figure out who says this. Some people think it's her, the woman, the wife in this situation, speaking of her young sister. That'd be kind of weird for it to be plural, right? We, but it could be. Some think it's the friends. Remember, we've seen these friends. These friends are out about everywhere. Her friends, and they're talking about her sister. I won't say most, but that's not true because they're kind of all over the map. But I think it's talking about her brothers. And I think this is referring to her in kind of a flashback way. So it could be. Now again, if you don't agree with that, that's fine because the principles are all going to be the same no matter who you take it. But I think it's her brothers, and I think because of some of this language, and we're going to see in just a minute, she's going to describe herself, that she's something like this. And so I think it makes most sense to look at these as her brothers. And her brothers, if you remember from way back in the first chapter, her brothers, she was angry with them, or they were angry with her, and I think the feeling was mutual, because they made her work out in the vineyard. She didn't like that. So my brothers were mean to me, they were angry with me, and they made me work out in the vineyard. And so now we see a little bit different view of the brothers. They're saying, we want to do something for our sister, presumably for her good. I think it comes across that way. It could be that they were just greedy because there'd be a payment that would be paid for a good bride. But I don't know, who knows? And her breasts are not yet grown, and we want to do something for her. So it's this idea of brothers, this is the way at least I'm taking it, brothers that are looking out for their little sister, all right? Big brother is watching, all right? Now, how many of you grew up in a family with more than just, you weren't an only kid, all right? Okay, there you go, a lot of you, all right? Some of you are like me, you're an only child, and it was a strange deal when I would argue with my siblings. My parents would go, "You don't have any siblings." I know, but I want them. And he's touching me. I'd be in the back seat saying that, and it was just weird. But the rest of you grew up with your siblings, right? And man, it was even true at my house during lunch today. I got my boy was back from college, or he's down there for the summer at Ames, and he was up, and he brought his girlfriend up, and that was nice. And they're sitting around the table, and the three of them are just going at it, you know, just the way boys know how to go at it. Just picayune little stuff and trying to see who's right and the whole thing. And it was like, man. And at the same time, these three guys, ever since they've been 2 years old and were beating on each other, they'll beat on each other until the moment when one of them, somebody's doing something against them. You know, like somebody else comes and picks on the little brother, and then they'll stand up for him. When I grew up, there was a family down the street from us, two houses down, but when you live in a rural area, that's like, I don't know, a third of a mile. That was quite a ways down, but it wasn't that far. But it was a little bit further down, and they had a big yard, where we could play football, and the yard was so big I could throw the ball as hard as I could. It wouldn't go out of the yard. And I have an awesome arm. I'm just saying. But they had a big yard, you know. We could play football. We played tackle football. All the kids in the neighborhood would come. We'd play tackle football. And in this one family, there were always three people that played. The buddy who was pretty much my age, Brian, his older brother, Mike, and then Peggy. Peggy was the best football player I'd ever seen. She just untackleable. You just could not tackle Peggy. She'd have to really, really hit her hard to knock her down. Okay? So, but you had to, because she was just so strong. I mean, it was just amazing. Peggy was tough. And so you'd have to really hammer Peggy to just knock her down. And then, of course, her brother would go, "What do you hit my sister like that for?" It's like, it's football. Almost every game we played ended in a fight. Somebody was yelling at somebody or punching somebody or something. It was a beautiful life, let me tell you. But what's this idea? The idea is you kind of protected your sister, even though as soon as you were done protecting them, they would just kind of beat on each other. That's what's going on here. The older brothers are protecting their younger sister, even though they were mean to her and made her go out and do all this work in the vineyard. They were also going to protect her. Same thing. Many of you grew up in the exact same environment. I'm seeing a lot of nods. You know what I'm talking about. All right. Now, what are they going to do? That's what they're going to do next. They say this. They say, here's what we're going to do about our younger sister. They're thinking back to when she was a young girl. And this could be, if you've been following the story, it could be, remember Solomon and his wife, the woman in the story, are traveling and they go home to her place. This could be while they're at home talking about that, or it could be as they reminisce it. However, remember songs are sometimes kind of, they don't follow exactly chronologically. They say this, the brothers say this now. If she's a wall, we'll build towers of silver on her. If she's a door, we will enclose her with panels of cedar. Now, commentators are 50-50 on this one, or something like that, on saying that these two are parallel or they're not. In other words, are these saying the same thing twice? Saying the same thing twice? Sorry. Or is this like a different situation? Is one situation, if it's this way, we'll do that, and if it's this way, we'll do that. And it is a little tricky. I do think it's two different things, okay? I do think that these are two different things. The wall and the door are different, and they're kind of similar, though. I can see why you could think that, but I think they're two different things, and there's two different courses of action. So let's look at them one at a time. First one, if she's a wall, we will build towers of silver on her. That's what it says. So, if this young little lady is like a wall. Now, what's a wall? Okay, here's a picture of Great Wall of China. All right? That's a wall. Okay? Point of a wall, anybody? keep people out, especially cats, right? Keep them out. Did I hear somebody say something favorably towards cats? No, stop that. Okay, now, the wall keeps people out. And they're saying if she's the wall kind of personality, she's kind of one of those people that doesn't let anybody in. She kind of keeps people at arm's length. Maybe she's overly shy. Maybe she's one who's just not easy to get to know. She's not a person who invites you in very easily. What are they going to do? We're going to decorate her. That's what it says. We're going to decorate her. Well, how? With towers of silver. All right? So that's the first case. A wall, if she's a wall-type person, we're gonna put some nice decorations on this wall, and we're going to make it so people want to come and see the wall. However, second thing, if she's a door, what are we going to do? We're going to enclose her. That's the NIV. I usually like the New International Version, but this particular time it's not. They kind of blew this. A lot of other versions get it right. It should say, not we will enclose, but we will barricade her is a better translation. We will barricade her with panels of cedar. Cedar doesn't rot, okay? What are we going to do? If she's a door, now what's a door? Now this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because here's a picture of an ancient door. All right, so you got a door, and what does a door do? A door opens, obviously, right? So it seems to make sense to me that this is different than a wall. A door is like how you go in. And if she's a door, and the door opens, and she's like, hey, everybody, I'm here. All the little boys, she's like, oh, little boy, will you take my heart, and will you take my heart, and will you take my heart? What are they going to say? We're putting a barricade on the door. We're going to put barricades, 2 pit bulls, shotguns that are loaded with little strings on them. When the door opens, boom! That's what we're going to do if you're a door. So these brothers are saying, if you're that personality type, that you're a door, we're going to protect you a lot. All right, now, the question for you is, first off, are you a wall or a door? Which is your natural tendency? Are you kind of more shy and reserved and takes a while to get in? Well, maybe you need a little decoration. Maybe you get out more often. Maybe be around people who are more like that. Or maybe you're a door. You know doors, when you sit down on the bus, a city bus or something, and you say, how you doing? And it's a 17-minute conversation with the next person. It's like, I was kind of just asking rhetorically, just it's fine was good with me, But this kind of, like, no, you asked. I can't believe you asked. Well, I just got my knee operated on. It was really hurtful. Then the nurse came in, and she messed up this injection, and there was blood and guts and ooze everywhere. This white stuff came out, and it's like, you're a door. I just barricade this guy. I don't want to know about the ooze. Ugh. Okay, so who are you? Which are you? And maybe you need to work on the other one. So some of you right now think you're a wall. And some of you right now think you're a door, and you're most likely what you don't think you are. Because you're going to think, well, I think I'm pretty open. And if you think that, for some of you that's going to be true, but for a lot of you it's like, no, you're a wall. You're pretty self-protected. You don't self-disclose a whole lot. And some of you think, I'm a door. I kind of let people in, but not really. So you're probably going to have to flip those. Ask other people what they think you are. You more like that or which? And so when you're in a mentoring or a parenting role, you need to figure out who these kids are or who you're mentoring. And it's a good way to know it. Like, for instance, if you are mentoring someone in a job, and you're coaching them along. You're 1 week, they're going to job shadow you. Do you allow them to make mistakes? Or do you just want to make sure that they do everything perfect? Because you won't want them to make any mistakes. That's going to say something about you, who you are. Now, when you think of parenting involves, I don't give a lot of parenting advice. I'm going to wait till my kids are out and successful and written books about how great their dad was. But for right now, I'm not saying nothing except this. I think parenting involves a couple things. First thing, here's a picture of a Minneapolis squad car. For whatever reason, it's impossible to find a good picture of a Minneapolis squad car. Now, does anybody know, on the side of that squad car, it has 2 quotes. Does anybody know? There's 2 things written underneath. Does anybody know what it says? Say it again. Now, there's not good that you know what's on the side of a Minneapolis squad car. Can I ask how you know? I'm just kidding. It's actually in Minneapolis it says to protect courageously and to serve compassionately. There was somebody in the first service that totally knew it, and I was like, oh, that's really, how do you know that? You know, a little too many times in the back seat, maybe. But anyway, the idea of protect and serve is around the country. That's what is the motto of the police, right? That is one of the roles as a parent. When you have a little one, like right back there, the little one in the hallway, I hope you don't mind me embarrassing you there, but little one, you are in the protection phase with that little one, right? You know, they're not just going to let them wander wherever they, can I have the keys to the car? She's going to say, she's what, barely can walk there. She's drooling right now on her dad. It's amazing. Okay, so my kids still do it. They're 18. But so that phase, it's high on the protection phase. But that's not all you're doing. You're not just protecting the kids. You're not just protecting the person you mentor, you're involved with. There's a second phase. That's why dads were invented, right? This one. There you go. You are preparing them. You are messing them up a little bit. You are roughhousing with them, right? You're getting them ready. And I remember I used to do this without the aid of a pool. I mean, I would just take as high as I could throw the kids. And I have huge biceps, okay? So I could take these guys, and I could take them, and I could whip them up there, go get a sandwich, come back, grab them. You know, I mean, they were up in the air as far as I could throw them. In our house, we had a couch. In fact, the couch is still down in the LDI office, that old blue one, all right? And the kids would come. We have 9-foot ceilings in my old South Minneapolis house. I would take those kids and throw them up, and they would just barely brush, usually once in a while completely clunk, but usually just brush that ceiling and do one bounce on that couch, second bounce, and then boom, land on the ground. And what do you think that kid would say? Exactly. Do it again, Daddy. Do it again, right? And they'd just be lined up. And I have the neighbor kids that say, well, sign the waiver first before I do you. But that's what they do. I just throw these kids as long, just be exhausted from throwing these kids to do that. Why? Because, and you know, of course, Carol's like, oh my, she's a nurse too, which is, you know, really bad. But, and so what's going on here? There's protection and there's preparation. And when they're young, it's all about protection. You don't take a child like that and just, whee, you know, let them bounce. And you're protecting. But there's somewhere in there where you're now preparing. And the protection starts to go less and less and less. And this is an area where, generally speaking, and I don't want to be too general on this, but most of the time, which one of the parents do you think goes which ways? Mama goes towards protection. Generally speaking, that's not always the case, but generally speaking, Mama goes towards protection and Daddy goes towards preparation, excuse me. Did that slip out? So for instance, if my kids wanted to do something, they always came, they still come to me. Mom won't let us do it. Can we do it? It's like, what are you asking me? I don't care, but I'm not going to say that to you. I'm not stupid, you know. Ain't Mama happy? Ain't nobody happy, you know. So, but the minute that they got an owie, the minute that they got hurt, they walk right past me and go to her. Because they knew if they came to me, they'd get those 3 little loving words that every father has passed down from generation to generation, right? Suck it up. Or the other 3 little words, walk it off. I can see what's going to happen. I'm going to be 85. I'm going to have 93 different cancers going through my body. My 4th open bypass. I'll be lying on this hospital bed, tubes out everywhere. And I can see my kids coming up to me going, Dad, walk it off. So that's what's going on here. That's what they're doing. They are protecting her. If you notice both of them, both the wall and the door, what do? They keep it a wall, but they're going to decorate it. They're going to decorate it with towers of silver. If it's a door, they're going to say, we're going to barricade it with planks of cedar. So both of them, because she's young, they are protecting her. But they're also preparing her. because they want her to be attractive. So in the one case, they're decorating her, so to speak, so that people will come towards her. That is the value of what these brothers were doing for her. Now, here comes one of the greatest surprises in the entire book for me. The first time I read this, I'm like, you say, what? Here we go. Song of Solomon 8, the first part of this, and this is her now speaking. She says, I am a wall. I'm not going to get to the second part of that. I'm going to get to that in a little bit because it's interesting. But I'm a wall. She's a wall? Are you kidding me? This woman in this book is a wall? Do you remember what she says? The first thing that is in the book, chapter 1, verse 1. Verse 2. Verse 1 is just where it says, Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, Solomon's favorite song, or whatever like that. And then the verse 2, she doesn't even know this guy. She just is attracted to him. What does she say? The first thing, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For your love is more delightful than wine. How do you know? You don't even know the guy. Pleasing is your fragrance, your perfume. I just smelled you. That's it. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder all the maidens love you. I really want you to be mine. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. That's a wall? Are you kidding me? That's not even a door. That's just a big gaping hole in the side of the house. Come on in, everybody. That's what it says. It's like, you're a wall? Are you crazy? But you start to follow this, and you start to realize that something's going on in the book that is more than just what's going on inside of her mind. Inside of her mind, she is a door. I mean, door. But in her actions, she's actually a wall. And it's very interesting to start, when you read the end of the book here where it says, I'm a wall, and then you go back and watch her, it's like, you are. It's really interesting. Because look at what happens next. In chapter 1, you get it to her, and she says, tell me, you whom I love. She doesn't even hardly know the guy. Where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday. Why should I be like the veiled women beside the flocks of your friends? And her friends say this to her now. If you don't know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep and graze your young goats by the tents of the shepherds. She has to be encouraged. She has to be decorated so that she can go and actually do it. She's all shy. Just go by him. Just go get by him. Hang out by him. Find his GPS and just put yourself in his path. Stalk him. And when she does that, the guy, who we think is Solomon, the guy makes the effort. He's the one who steps out. He says to her, as she's doing this, kind of getting in his way, an all shy, wally kind of way, he says, I liken you, my darling, to a mare harnessed to one of the chariots of Pharaoh. In other words, your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of pearls will make you strings of gold, earrings of gold studded with silver. And the idea is he's saying, you are like a mare attached to these chariots that were stallions, and now we're distracted from what we were supposed to be doing. So he goes on and he says, I'm like a horse, a male horse, and you are like a mare. Go to the next one, Rob, there. So you get this, he's saying that to her, though. I said this to Carol last night. Carol, we had this graduation party thing going on Friday night, and we've been working on that like crazy, and yesterday was clean up and all that kind of thing. So, I don't know, around 8 o'clock, I figured I'd have something to say today. So, started working. It's not that far from the truth, actually. So I'm in the living room, and I just love my wife. But I'm a bit of a chick magnet with her sometimes. And wherever I go, she kind of goes. And so she sits down, and I said, honey, you're in the same room. She says, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to sit here. I'd like to be in the same room with you. I said, I know, but you're there, and now, and you're distracting me. She says, I'm not the one talking here. You're talking. I'm like, well, you're like a mare. You're like a mare. You're distracting me. Whatever. She is. And that's what Solomon starts to do towards her. What does he do? He's decorating the tower. He's decorating the wall. He's opening her up. And then she goes on from there. It says to him, in this same chapter, chapter 1, while the king was at his table, my perfume spreads its fragrance. My lover is to me like a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My lover is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. In other words, what he's saying, you're distracting me as well. I smell you. You're like to me a sachet of myrrh, and I'm smelling you all the time as well. And she's starting to open up. In fact, if you look at this, you look at how far she's come. When you read this at the end where it says she's a wall, you start to go, oh, that makes some sense now. Because in the beginning of the book, she's very self-conscious. Remember that phrase? She says, dark am I, yet lovely. And the idea there was, this was not a racial thing about her skin color. It was more about she was darker than most because she was a peasant girl working in the vineyards, and she had farmer tan. A better translation would this be, farmer tanned am I, yet lovely. Okay, that's really what it's saying. It's not talking at all about color of people's skin at all. It's talking about farmer tanned. She was self-conscious about this. In fact, she went on to say, don't look at me because I am dark, because I'm darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I've neglected. My own body, my own vineyard I have neglected. And yet she starts to say things like, I'm a rose of Sharon. But you know what? I'm just a lily in the valleys. I'm just one of the lilies. He's the one who decorates her again and says, like a lily among thorns is my darling among the maidens. Yeah, you're a lily, but you're the only lily to me. The rest of them are like thorns. Great line, by the way. Guys, memorize it. It's good. It'll work. Now, she then goes on and she becomes, by the time he asks her to marry him in chapter 2, she now says, my lover is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies and he's chosen me. And then he says, she's saying, until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn my lover and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the rugged hills. Right? That's a very unique way to say yes to someone's proposal. And if you know what that is talking about there, you know, some of you are smiling, so you know what it's talking about. She's inviting him to her breasts. Just wait now. We're going to wait till, because the next thing she's going to say is, do not, daughters of Jerusalem, I adjure you, do not awaken or arouse love until it so desires. So she's going to say, but she's saying yes to this. And now she's come that far. But she is a wall. By the time you get to chapter 8, to kind of fast forward here to a couple weeks ago where we're at, she's saying to him, they've been married now a while, and he's decorated her up in such a way that she's safe enough to have enough self-disclosure to say, I wish you were my brother so that we could just smoochy smooch all the time out in public. And that seems weird. But in other words, in that culture, you could embrace your brother or a family member, but you couldn't a husband or a wife. It's frowned upon. She's saying, I wish you were my brother so I could kiss you. Then I'd find you, I'd kiss you, and no one would despise me. She's a wall. She's a wall. And as slowly, he's drawn her out throughout the book to do that. Now, and that gives us this tension that we talked about in the book. The tension is, it's like two poles and there's a wire hanging in between. The one side is guarding your heart, Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. On the other side is this seeming openness, this seeming understanding of all this is about really exploring your heart and letting it go. And those two things have to be in tension. The wire is the right place to be. Let those both be there. She is guarding her heart, and at the same time she's letting more and more self-disclosure happen. And that's what walls need to work on. More and more self-disclosure. Now, let's talk about the value of this. Here we go. I am a wall, she says, and my breasts are like towers. Okay, which is just kind of a weird thing to say, huh? I mean, it's just kind of a strange, I can't help but get the image of the Madonna thing in the 80s out of my head, so apologize about this. Now, what does that mean? And I actually had somebody first service, and Jordan and I were talking a little bit, and I'm just commenting on it quick. And is Jesse here today? Jesse here tonight? Nope. Okay. I think there's a little bit of a link between the previous time that towers were there, where it said, we will decorate her with towers, and now she's saying, I'm fully developed. I'm developed as a woman, and I got my own decoration. And this decoration is her breasts. And it's not necessarily saying anything about anything. I'm just going to leave it like that. But it's saying it's an invitation to her. She's got her own decoration now. She's been naturally developed as a woman, and she's decorative. And it's saying this, thus, or because of all this, I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment. In other words, because of the fact, number one, that my brothers took care of me and guarded me, and yet tried to open me up, but did it with a protective way, with both protection and preparation, and the fact that I'm developed now as a woman, I am now one that can really give all of my heart. I haven't given it here and here and here and here and here and over and over and over and over. It's been protected. So remember, the key to this thing, we'll see in just a second, is she's the one who has the key to her heart. She is the only one who has the key to her heart. And because of that, she's now able to give it. She's able to give it, but it's not something he can take. Now, she's going to give an analogy, an illustration. So that's kind of the main first point, even though it covered, I think, 4 different things in our little scale here. But this first point is kind of walls and doors. And now she's going to give an analogy to explain this. And here she goes. She's going to use this vineyard analogy. And the analogy goes like this. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal-Hamon. And Baal-Hamon is not a real place. We have no idea where it is. It sounds like abundance. And so that's probably what it means. Got this vineyard, and it's an abundant vineyard, okay? And he let it out. He let this vineyard out to tenants. Kind of a poor translation. Really means he owns it, and he's having workers in it. Again, the NIV, it's not the clearest here. There's other people. They're working in this vineyard, okay? Now, each was to bring, and again, this is unfortunate because each makes it sound like the tenants, but that's not what it means. It means, and if you look at any other translation, I should have just used a different translation today. It's the only time I haven't really liked the NIV this time, but each meaning other people, when they come to get from the fruits, they get the grapes, they have to pay 1,000 shekels of silver, which is an enormous amount of money. Okay, so the point is, they have this beautiful vineyard, okay? Wonderful, gorgeous vineyard, and it's this massive, it's a king could own this kind of vineyard. Other people work it, and then when people come to buy from this vineyard, it is precious. The grapes are perfect, and you got to pay 1,000 shekels for a good quantity of grapes. Clear as mud? Got it? That's the analogy. Now she's going to tell you what the analogy means. Here we go. She's going to say, this valuable vineyard is actually me. But my own vineyard is mine to give. That is a good translation. 3 times in that sentence is the word my there. Me, myself, and I. I own it. Mine. Did you know who owns this? It's me. Says it 3 times. In my own vineyard, it's mine to give. The sentence says nothing, right? It doesn't say anything. It just says, I have a vineyard, and I give it. That's it. But it's mine. Did I tell you what's mine? It's mine. Okay, that's what she's saying. This fancy vineyard is me. This fancy vineyard is me. And then she says this. The 1,000 shekels are for you, Solomon. In other words, as you've come, you can keep your money. The fruit of this, of who I am, is for you. All the preparation that my brothers did, all of the working and decorating me, all of that is to make me who I am for you, and you are reaping the benefits, O Solomon. The 1,000 shekels are for you, and 200 are for those who tend its fruit. Who are the workers that have tended this fruit? My brothers. They've tended this. They've cared for me. They've made me who I am. Now, that's kind of the point here of what's going on. There's this very, very valuable vineyard. One of the commentaries that I was looking at, it's got a very provocative name. It's called Biblical Lovemaking, but it's actually it's interesting. It has some real wild interpretations, but I think this is good. They say this. They say, her brothers watched her development and took proper precautions at proper times. Children often reflect the sexual attitudes of their parents. If the parents view sex within marriage positively, their children are less likely to have negative attitudes. If a mother views sex as simply a necessary evil, the daughter is apt to enter into marriage with the same attitude. If the father views sex as a means of male gratification without real regard for the pleasure and personhood of the wife, the son is apt to enter into marriage with the same concepts. The end product is a repetition of their parents' unhappiness in the marriage. Christian couples should develop a healthy and biblical attitude towards sexual union. Such an attitude will provide a good example for their children. By becoming examples of both virtue and proper attitudes towards sexual relations, the parents are laying the foundations for the success of their children's future marriage. I'm not going to embarrass anybody, but if I were to ask you to raise your hand that you had two things from your parents, and you could only raise your hand if these two things were true. Number one, they amply talked to you about sex. Not just one day, a 17-page book with some pictures, and whoop, glad that's done, moving on. I mean, they talked to you about it as time went on. They talked to you about it, and second thing, they modeled so that you could see I don't want to finish this sentence. That you could see the fruit of a healthy sexual relationship. Some of you may need counseling because of other things, but you saw the fruit of a healthy physical relationship between your parents. My guess is, I could be way off, my guess is that only about 10% would say yes to both those questions. That they talked to you amply about it, and that you saw that they had a healthy physical relationship, again, in a very appropriate way, but you had that. That'd be my guess, about 10%. I mean, if I'm right, if I'm anywhere near right, then, and like I said about my folks, and I love my folks, they're great parents, but in that area, I remember got half the talk once, which was more confusing than anything. I'm still kind of recovering from that, and I think I've seen my parents kiss once or twice, ever. And I'm talking kiss of any kind of kiss. It's like, wow, there's a lot more PDA going on in the Treichler household. And that's another issue, but that's a different day. Now, our house. So, because of that, because of some of you grew up in homes where it was just, we don't talk about this. This is not something we ever talk about. You have a stigma, and by default, you go to sex is bad. Sex is dirty. All right, that's where you go. And some of you have a real hang up with that because of that. You grew up with this stigma that it was bad. And so there, as a result, you need some coaching, you need some counseling, and I don't mean counseling like counseling, but just friendships, talking about it, small groups, friends, whatever, where you're working through some of this stuff, understanding it better. Some of you grew up where it was just wide open. You know, maybe it was porn laying everywhere and the whole thing. You need to understand God's design for sexuality. My hope for this series is that, I don't know how many people go to Hope now. It's kind of confusing, but let's just, whatever. But I don't know, 1,000 or so. Have come during this series. I hope that we'd start to reverse a trend. That 1,000 people now would set, maybe not for you, but maybe for the next generation. That would change the way you look at this. And they could look back and say, my mom and dad, they were like, I was like a door, and they helped me to barricade. They helped me to understand proper restraint at times. Or I was like a wall, man. I needed somebody to kind of decorate me a little bit, and they worked with me. That's my aim. That's one of my aims in doing this, is that 5, 10, 15 years from now, I'll meet your kids, hopefully, and 20 years from now, and they'll start to say, thank you for preaching on sex to my parents, because they were whacked before, but now they're perfect. Now, the book ends with each of them speaking their love languages. There's a book that came out by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. Anybody ever heard of this book, 5 Love Languages? It seems like everybody's heard of this book. Okay. The book says there are 5 love languages. Anybody know what they are? Acts of service, gifts giving, quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch. Thank you. They're the 5. Now, I think this is a really good book. I have no idea if there's only 5. Where did that come from? I mean, did you just forget the 6th? Maybe there is. I don't know. Maybe there's more. But I think there's a great principle in the book that you can learn, and it's this. Figure out what the other person likes, and when you're trying to express love, try to speak it in their language, not in your own. That's worth the price of the book. Of course, I just told you it, so you don't have to buy it. But the idea is this. You tend to give what you want, right? Right? A couple Christmases ago, I bought Carol for Christmas a shrink wrapper so she could take all of the fish and ducks and things that she has, and she could shrink wrap them. The funny thing is, we had never talked about this. She bought me one too. It was like, oh, yeah, I really want that. Thanks. Here, open this one. Should have had my own name on it because I really wanted one of those. But I thought it'll be great. You can shrink wrap one of the kids when you're bored of them, or I don't know what. But you tend to give the other person what you want. That's what you do, right? For instance, of those 5, I would say words of affirmation is what I want. I want words of affirmation, right? And for Carol, it would be acts of service and physical touch. That's kind of what she wants. But when we first see each other, it's kind of interesting because Carol will want me to enter into her life. She'll want me to hold her, and she'll want me to look in her eyes and ask her, how's her day been? And then she'll want me to do something for her, do the dishes. That's her love language, right? But oftentimes when I come home, she'll hold me and say, how was your day? And I really don't want to talk about my day. I mean, it was great. It was a great day, a good day. I don't really want to be held. So if you can let me go, I'd really appreciate that, you know? That's what she wants. That's fine. You tend to give what you want. And the idea is give what the other person wants. And they nail it at the end. The last 2 verses of our book here, as we've been walking through Song of Solomon, the last 2 verses nail it. He's speaking out. Look at what he says to her. He says, you who dwell in the gardens, with friends in attendance, let me hear your voice. He says, of all this stuff you've been talking about, you know what I want? I want you to talk with me. I want to hear your voice. I want to get to know you better. That's what she wants. And that's what he gives her. That's what he says. I want you. I want to want you. I need you to need. No, that's another song. Sorry, cheap trick. Sorry. But that's what he says to her. Now look what she says to him. She says to him this. We're done talking. Come away, my lover, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the spice-laden mountains. Do you remember the spice-laden mountains? Remember, he named them. Mount Incense and Mount Myrrh. He named them, and she's saying, come on. I'm just saying. I didn't write this stuff. I'm just saying, she's saying, let's get it on. And he's saying, you hit my love language, baby. That is my love language. Okay? So, you have these different love languages. Hers was, I really want you to talk on, and his was sex. Now, I had a buddy who encouraged me with this, and this comes from a woman. This is a female. It's a woman. She said, so it's a woman speaking at a woman's conference. So it's a woman and a lot of women, okay? There's no guys. It was a woman. She spoke to a bunch of women in the audience. And there's a disc with a DVD or a CD of this. And she said in this disc, the woman said this, not a man, a woman said this. She said, women, if you want your guy to open up to you, give him lots of sex. I bought that for Carol. Because part of a man's love language is sex. Part of the way they say, yeah, that's the way I feel in the relationship, you know? And the woman said that, though. I didn't say that. I'm just quoting the woman, of which I bought for her. Listen to this now. But the idea is that sex was a way to say, I feel one with you. I feel right with you. And for her, and that's not always the case, but generally speaking, for her it was, I really want to be heard and I want to be known and all those kind of things. That's great. And that should be just as well. Learn what the other person's love language is. All right, now, how do you apply this? Gospel application. I want to take this because I think as we've went through all this, before I open it up for questions just a second, I want to hit this. I think that there's obviously, this is talking about in a marriage relationship and how beautiful it can be and how complicated it can be, and believe me, it's complicated, and it is. And if you think you're going into marriage thinking, oh, life will be better and easier then, no, it will not. Marriage will not solve any of your problems, it only rearranges them. It does. So just get that out of your thick skull right now, that will solve it, because it won't. But this obviously has other things about, the book is not just about marriage. It is about personhood. It's about our character, about being people of integrity. It's about a whole bunch of other things. Giving, I can give in other people's love languages, all kinds of things you can learn just about your relationships. But I also think it has, ultimately then, just like we talked about, it links to our relationship with God. And I want to go back to the walls and the doors and the goals of parenting, the goals of parenting. And what were they? They were protecting and preparing. And I want to talk to you about that just as who God is. First of all, God is your protector. God is your protector. And just let me read this passage from Matthew. Jesus is speaking and he's teaching about this very thing. And it's a fascinating passage. It says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. So Jesus is using this word afraid or fear. Some translations say fear. Rather, be afraid or fear the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So who's he talking about? He's talking about the Father. Be afraid or have fear towards the Father because he will hold you accountable for your sin. He is the one who can do that. So don't be afraid of people who can just kill you. That's no big deal. Be afraid instead of God. Okay, now it's like, whoa, wait a minute now. Where does that come from? Keep reading. This is where it gets fascinating. He says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? You can buy 2 sparrows for a penny and roast them up. Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. God knows all about every single bird. In fact, even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Wait a minute now. You just told me a minute ago to be afraid. Yes. Now you're saying don't be afraid. Yes. Which is it? Yes. What? What I think he's saying is this. You put God in such a place of awe and respect and, yes, fear, that you say, God, you are awesome. You are everything. You are the word you spoke and things are created and amazing things happen. You are that powerful. And yet this fear is not the kind of fear that makes you shudder and go back away from God. It says, don't be afraid. You're worth more than many sparrows. God holds you as valuable. He wants to draw you into relationship with himself. This kind of fear is not the kind that makes you afraid. It's the kind of fear that draws you towards. It draws you towards him. Now, some of you grew up thinking, no matter whatever, and many of us grew up in Minnesota. We're not unchurched. We just grew up de-churched. And some of our images of God is that God is up in the sky waiting for you to screw up. He just can't wait for you to make a mistake, and he's waiting. He's ready to pounce. It's kind of like the big ninja in the sky. He's just waiting, and then, there, you blew it. Wham! He's ready to nail you. Just seeing you, and they're up. Boom! Finally, gotcha. And that's your view of God. That God is there, and he's just someone to be feared, but certainly not to have a relationship with. This passage says, God is awesome and mighty, and yet, don't be afraid of him. You're worth more than many sparrows. He's protecting you every stretch of the way. He cares for you more than you can possibly imagine. every hair of your head, he knows where it is, in relation to the others. He knows all about you. And he cares that deeply for you. He protects you. Second thing, God is your preparer. God is preparing you. No matter what you're going through today, God is preparing you. Hebrews 12 talks about this, and I love this passage. And for some of you today, you come in here with a heavy heart. Something as life has come and it has just taken the feet from underneath you, and you are lying on the sidewalk on your back. That's how you feel. And this passage explains that. It says, do not be afraid, it says, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as sons or daughters. And peace for those who've been trained by it. God never wastes pain. Period. No matter what you're going through, and it seems like for some of you it's just the darkest possible place, God is there, and God is the one who's screaming to you saying, this is something that you are going to become a different person on the other side. And you have to trust me. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. I'm preparing you. Okay. Let me open it up for any questions you might have about anything at all in the book of Song of Solomon. Anything you want to ask about anything about today, walls and doors, parenting, not about parenting, just preparing and protecting, or anything else you'd like to ask about in the book of Song of Solomon that you didn't have a chance to do. And so, anyway. And then the air conditioner comes on, yeah. Anybody got anything? Nobody? Okay, it's great. I can guarantee you 10 to 1, 2 or 3 people come down afterwards. I was going to ask you, but I didn't want to. That's okay. No pressure. Well, this series has been great. I have really enjoyed Song of Solomon. I hope you have too. It's a great book. I hope you get a chance to read it, meditate on it. We're going to close our time tonight with a time just to reflect on what Christ has done for us. And Christ screams to you protection and preparation on this table. This table is his way of showing you beyond anything else that you are well loved, you are well cared for, like a parent caring for a child perfectly. Christ comes, he dies for you, he raises for you, he's interceding for you right now. And that's what this table represents. The bread represents Christ's body, which was broken for you, and the cup represents his blood, which was shed for you. And so just as a time of response tonight and a time to respond to God, anytime during the 2 songs of worship, feel free to come forward and to grab a piece of bread and to take a cup. And you can drink it up front, or you can go back, have a seat, however you want to do it. And just use this time to interact with God and anything at all that he might be wanting to say to you. We practice open communion at Hope. You don't need to be a member of this church. You don't need to be a member of any church. We just ask that you're a member of Jesus, that you're a follower of Christ. And if you're not yet, right where you're seated, you can just do business with Christ and say, Jesus, I want you as my Savior. I want you to take my sin. Jesus, and I turn from it. Jesus, I want you as my Lord. I turn from all the other things in the world and other things in my life that I was following as king, and I want to follow you. And boom, you just became a follower of Christ at that moment. You gave him your heart, and you come forward and take your first communion. Let's pray together.